Hello, hello. Welcome, all my heartfelt leaders, to Practicing Life podcast. I'm Ashley Pitzer, your host. Today's topic is on the savior complex. Now, this can go by many different names. You can say savior, hero, fixer, that person that has to fix and solve all the problems, whatever it may be, whatever label it is. You'll know whether or not this fits you just by how often do people ask you for help and how hard is it for you to say no. So let's begin. And I want to talk about the fact that even as a coach, and many other coaches out here are listening, that we still go through life lessons and we still have inner work to deal with. And so this particular episode is based on a personal experience and my growth. So that's kind of the inspiration to this episode today. So Lao Tzu has a quote out there. He's a famous Chinese philosopher from a long, long time ago. He, wrote a quote along the lines that you could teach a man to fish, or you can give him a fish per day. Now, I misquoted that. It's not exactly perfect, but the concept is there. And I actually wrote a paper on this in high school when I was working on getting scholarships into college. And I heard about how the government basically gives us a fish a day versus teaching us to fish and to be independent and resourceful. And so when I am using this quote, I am using this quote as in when you act as the person who fixes, the helper to another person, you are essentially just giving them a fish. And you're not teaching them how to support and stand on their own 2 feet and be independent. So this is kind of the direction I am taking this podcast today. Now, everybody has grown up with different philosophies, different backgrounds. I talk a lot about how your subconscious works. And most of what you are today has been taught to you from a very primitive age, very impressionable ages of 5 through 8 years old. A lot of your mentality and the way that you view the world comes from those ages. Almost everything you know today has been taught to you. And so maybe you were taught that it is a good thing to do to be helpful. And I have been taught this, especially in the Christian faith. You are taught to lend a hand, to be helpful, to give your own shirt off your own back, to self-sacrifice your own needs and your own wants to be able to help another person. Wherever you have learned this, whether it's from a parent, a religion, whatever it has created this type of mentality for you, the issue still remains. You can teach a person to fish, stand on their own 2 feet, to be responsible for the things that are happening on their life, or you can solve their problem creating kind of a co-dependency enabling relationship. So I mentioned that I'm bringing this episode up today and the topic based on my own experience. I've already mentioned that I have kind of that savior complex. At least that's a behavior I participated in the past. So in my personal example, I'm going to talk to you about my teenager in the dating world. All right, every parent probably can relate to having a teenager and when they first start dating, those heartbreaks and how it affects you as a parent, let alone your child. But in this particular case, I had a situation where my kids spent like an hour trying on like 10 different outfits, asking me what I thought. Does this look cool? Does this look right? Does this look good on me? Making sure his hair looked super great. And he had a date later on that day. And this date had been canceled already in the past. And he was really looking forward to this particular date and was doing what he could to impress the girl. And, I'm participating in all of this as a mom and giving my opinion and enjoying all of this. And we get in the car and we drive over to the girl's house. And on the way over, he gets a text. And it's, oh, sorry, I can't hang out with you tonight. We'll have to reschedule again. And my kid is immediately upset. And I am setting in so much uncomfortability knowing that my kid is upset. And I can feel my heart racing and I can feel the pressure in my chest. And I am hurting so much for him because I know, especially seeing him prepare for this, how significant this date was to him. And it brings up my own memories because this is the way the subconscious mind works. So it's not only that he's experiencing this, it's bringing up past experiences, whether it's in the dating world or that job that you wanted and you didn't get hired for, right? It's bringing up past memories for me. And so not only am I sitting with his emotions and how I really don't want him to experience this hurt and this pain, I'm also pulling up my own memories and it's triggering all of these thoughts and emotions that came with those memories. That's the way the brain works. So prior to becoming a life coach and really stepping into transformational work, I would have totally been a fixer. Those thoughts, those brain patterns, despite rewiring them, they still existed in my brain. So the first thought that was coming up into my brain, again, this was one of my coping skills. So it makes sense that it's coming up was, well, kind of like, we'll show them, we're going to go do something awesome. We're going to go have so much fun. You're not even going to think about the fact that, your date canceled on you. This is an old coping mechanism to me. So let's say I had an event that I was going with girlfriends and all of a sudden it was canceled or they went off and did something. And I had this, oh, I'm left behind. I'm left out. I'm all alone. Nobody likes me, right? Like if I had that type of thoughts or emotions coming up, your thoughts lead to your emotions. Then my fixer was, well, I'll show them I'm going to go to a concert tonight, or I'm going to go call so-and-so, and we're going to go out and we're going to have so much fun. And in today's world, which didn't exist in my younger world, I probably would have been posting on social media and being like, haha, look at me having so much fun, right? Now, I have grown a lot, thankfully, and those type of behaviors don't exist, but the brain patterns still exist. That coping skill still exists. So as a parent sitting in the car with my kid, that mentality still exists in my brain. I just have the awareness around it now to understand where it's coming from, why it's coming from, and being able to choose what I want to think and how I want to behave now instead of reacting. So I didn't react and go into that old coping skill, but that didn't stop those thoughts from coming up. That night I was going to the Fabulous Fox, which is in St. Louis, one of our huge theaters. So, oh, it's such a treat. If you're ever in the St. Louis area and you love musicals or concerts or performances, you check out Fabulous Fox. It's such a treat to go. And so my first thought was, okay, that's it. I'm going to get on my phone. I'm going to search to see if there are any tickets available. I will move me and my friend. I will find a way. My friend will find, like already sacrificing. That was my mentality without even, coming to that full recognition of where my thoughts were going and what it would mean. But that thought was there, and I was totally willing to sacrifice my girlfriend time, my self-care time, my independence, because I was ready to fix my kid's emotions. I was ready for him to get out of these hurtful, unwanted emotions. Can you relate to this? Maybe this isn't the exact scenario. It could be anything, right? It could be, helping a neighbor and you see that they're struggling. It could be helping a coworker who's swamped with their work and needs you to stay late and help. Can you recognize that I will step in, I will help you mentality, even though you're not considering what it's going to cost you? Okay, that is that that savior, that hero, that fixer complex. And this doesn't just affect women, this affects men. And in a lot of ways, men are shown in TV, at least, and in different cultures, very predominant in certain cultures, that they are to be the fixer, the problem solver. They are to be the man of the house, and all of these burdens fall on them. And they are to save their wife from their struggles and, whatnot. Maybe women have it more with their kids. I'm not there to say, I'm not there to judge, because everybody has a different relationship and culture in their life, but you kind of get the scope. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about challenging yourself to sit in that discomfort of not fixing the person's problem, because it's going to cause you discomfort, not fixing their problems. Are you willing? Are you able and capable, which I know you are, but it's also a willingness to receive that uncomfortableness and set in the discomfort and not fix things. That is the challenge for you. This is what I am bringing to your attention. One of the things that I had to learn the hard way is that, helping is hurting. And that really went against kind of like my morals, my values, how I was raised, the way that my brain thought, the way I perceived information, because I was brought up to, you just give always. Even if it costs you, you give. Self-sacrifice is sometimes necessary for the greater good, right? This is the mentality that I was brought up in. And like I said, this came at a very expensive cost to me. Whether or not you're the first time listening to the show, or if you've been listening for a long time, my teenager, when he was in his 13s, the entire year of his 13 age, he was suicidal. He had suicidalization. And so 6 suicidal attempts, 6 hospital stays, 6 times he's staying in the hospital for a week or longer. And that's where I learned my painful lesson that helping is hurting. So while I was taking my kid to all of these counselors and all of these psychological, evaluations and going through, this is where I first started getting into life coaching and starting to getting coached myself. I really had to learn that what I was teaching my kid when I was stepping in to feed them that fish and help them every single time, what I was really teaching them is not to be able to handle the situation themselves. I was teaching them that I didn't trust them to be able to handle the situation. So this is a wake-up call for all of you out there. Maybe you're not in the situation yet. Maybe you haven't had some type of grenade go off in your life, a life crisis. Maybe you have, and it repeats 6 times. Like, whatever your situation is, I want to bring awareness around this to you. And everybody's in a different situation, and you're exactly where you need to be. Okay, so maybe this isn't hitting home for you today. Maybe this will hit home for you 3 years from now. This podcast will exist somewhere out there in this world of social media and technology. Okay, but I was a helicopter parent, 100%. There were times that I wasn't, like when my kid was on the playground and there might have been a conflict between another kid over whose turn it was to go down the slide, right? And those were instances where I could step back and let my kid handle things. But if I perceived it to be something that was harmful or significant, I would step in. And I wasn't teaching my kid how to handle his emotions and how to step outside of his comfort zone and how to look at all of your resources. I was just jumping in and being like, I'm here to save the day, right? I was there to fix his problems so that he didn't have to experience hurt and pain and whatever it may be. Now, I will put this caveat out there, my liability disclaimer, right? There's certain times that you are going to step in. I'm not advocating this is black and white and 100% of the time you shouldn't step in and ever solve a problem. But I am going to kind of give you some guidance about things that you can do before you become the fixer. This is not only for you, but this is for the other person that you are trying to help. All right. So one of the things I had to learn that when I was fixing somebody's problem, a lot of times it was because it was bringing up uncomfortable thoughts and feelings for me that I didn't want to sit with and I didn't want to handle, let alone my presumption of what the other person was feeling. Like in the case of my kid, I presumed, and I could see my kid being super upset, but I presumed that he was going through some of the same emotions and feelings and thoughts that I did, that was coming up for me from my past. I didn't like sitting in that discomfort. I mean, it's called discomfort for a reason. The word appropriately identifies what it's like. It's uncomfortable. It's you wiggle, you squirm, you want to get out of it, right? I didn't like that feeling. I wanted to escape from it as soon as possible. I love peace. I want to get back to peace as soon as possible. And sometimes I am willing to jump into problems and solve problems to get me into a peaceful state as soon as possible, assuming that as soon as I'm in a peaceful state, that naturally this would create peace for them and this would help them. So this is one thing. But also what I had to learn through life coaching and through counseling is that I was teaching, when I come in and I save somebody, I'm teaching them distrust. There's a certain amount of respect that you create within your body and within your mind and your soul when you solve a problem for yourself. When you overcome an obstacle, it increases your personal power. It increases your stamina to be able to handle the next problem that comes along. It increases your self-respect and your self-worth and your self-love. It creates a feeling of proudness, of victory. And when somebody comes in and they see you struggling and they don't give that like tough love and allow you to struggle through it and to figure it out, being that guidance versus the fixer, then you're denying that person all of those feelings, all of those accomplishments. And you're also making it harder for them the next time a problem is thrown at them. That's where the codependency and the enabling becomes. The more that you step in to fix, the more that person isn't even going to attempt. They're not even going to try. They're just going to turn and look at you and be like, hey, you're the person who always solves my problem. So let's talk about this from a subconscious point of view. As many of you know, I am a hypnotist. I study how the brain works. So our brain, it loves to be right. Our brain loves secondary benefit gains that are often unconscious. Again, they're created from when you're really little. They're brain patterns. They're things that exist within your brain that you have to learn to draw awareness around in order to change it or to perceive something differently. And so talking from that perspective, let's talk about some secondary benefit gains. These are your drivers. This is why you do it. And even when you create awareness around it, sometimes you can't change it. This is why I come in as a hypnotist and I help you change it easy, comfortably, fast, through the subconscious reprogramming. That doesn't mean that you can't do this on your own without hypnosis. There are many ways to handle this. The trick is to be able to identify that secondary gain. Like I said, it's a blind spot. It's unconscious. You're often not aware of it. And without awareness, it's really just, I would almost say, impossible to change it. You can change it by, kind of that dumb luck or something that has that epiphany. But when you have an epiphany, that's awareness. All right. So these are some possible and common secondary gains. This may not apply to you because secondary gains are so personal and individual. But for many, these are some of the common secondary gains. Why you fix things. why you jump in to solve somebody else's problem, why you're the first person people call on, right? You don't have to feel that feeling of uncomfortability. When I was sitting in the car with my son, I could have easily jumped in and said, well, you're going to the fabulous box with me tonight. And then I would have been shifting his perspective to something fun to look forward to. I didn't have to sit in discomfort. He didn't have to sit in discomfort. So that's one of the secondary gains. I don't have to deal with the pain, the emotional pain, the mental pain of seeing my kids suffer in some means, on some level. That's a secondary gain. You also get a lot of recognition, accolades, like, oh, I couldn't have done this without you. And hearing that feels so good, and it creates self-worth and self-value for you. And so when you're doing that, you're coming from that perspective of your self-worth is earned, and other people have to hand it to you in order for you to have it and to receive it. This isn't the episode to go over coaching on that, but let me tell you, external validation is going to often leave you empty inside. Learning to create self-validation for yourself is where you are going to be the strongest and the most personal power and the most able to help somebody, because you're coming from a place where you are full and versus on empty, waiting for somebody to fill your bucket with those accolades. Okay. So again, a secondary benefit is that recognition. And let me tell you that some people are predisposed to needing that recognition, as in their human design is set up to need recognition. So my husband is a projector. We won't go into human design and what it is, but as a projector, he has a built-in system to crave, want, thrive. Really, that's the word I'm looking for. He thrives in recognition. So that's another secondary benefit. You are perceived as having all of your stuff together. You know, you're that strong one. You're the person who everybody can count on. You're the person who gets stuff done, right? And it's an identity for you, and you value that identity and you don't want to let it go. So that's another secondary benefit. You have control over the situation when you fix something. You know, a lot of times when you jump in and you help, you start running the show, you start calling the shots, and people are just doing what you're telling them to do. And you have a lot of say and authority and control. And that feels good. And that gives you a sense of comfort and security in the situation. Again, avoiding, because our brain, our subconscious, seeks pleasure or it avoids pain. So it seeks pleasure of getting that recognition, of calling the shots, of feeling like they are in control. It avoids pain. It avoids the discomfort of those emotions. Okay. And then again, another benefit is that you feel good about yourself. Like you pat yourself on the back and your ego gets inflated. I don't think ego is something that's bad. I know that in a lot of people who are working on their spiritual enlightenment look at ego as bad. I really work from the standpoint of we're just learning lessons. And our ego is teaching us a lot of lessons. And I work from no longer tolerating self-judgment. So I'm not here to judge you for having an ego. Our ego is necessary. It's needed. We wouldn't have it if it wasn't necessary and needed. But inflating that ego has a reward for you. What is it costing you? Boy, oh boy, I bet many of you know already. You know, everything is cause and effect. Depending on what side of the coin you're looking at, we just looked at the benefits. That side is shiny and bright and it calls your name. You love all those benefits, but there's always a cost to something, right? There's yin and yang always. And so what is it costing you? For many of you, you've been here. You've felt the burnt out, everybody needing you all the time. You just don't have time for yourself. There's just not enough time in the day. right? Because you're so busy being everybody's fixer, it costs you something. It costs you time. It costs you energy. It also, if you don't get the recognition, the reward that you were expecting and anticipating, it can lead to resentment. Let's bring up my husband again. Loves recognition. He will work for it. That's just who he is, and I accept him for who he is. But on the flip side of it, if he was expecting for me to go goo goo gaga over something that he did and I didn't do this, then there's resentment that comes up for him. I'm not appreciated. I'm not loved. Look at all I do for you, and you don't even acknowledge it, right? This is some of the words that come up for him. This is some of the words that come up for my clients and people that I know as my friends, right? There's a resentment. Look, I stayed late at work for 3 weeks in a row to help you with this project. I missed out on time with my family and my kids to help you. And this is the thanks I get. No thanks at all, right? This is all coming from that need for recognition, that need for external validation, that drive of your ego to receive the benefits that you perceived would be received. So it costs you most of the time. This leads to burnout. Searching for your self-worth, searching for your validation leads to burnout because you're not the source of it. You're not the creator of your own validation. And so this can lead to burnout. This can lead you to being that type of person who always says yes when they mean no, when it's uncomfortable for them to say no because they're not willing to sit in the discomfort of saying no to somebody, but they're willing to expend their energy and their time and their resources to help them when they don't have it for their own self. A lot of people that come in and fix other people, they're so focused on you that they're blind to their own life. They're ignoring the fact that, their faucet or something at home is broke. They're ignoring the fact that their bills need to be paid. Their, yard needs to be loaded. They still got 10 loads of laundry to do at home. They're so busy fixing your problems and they're so busy ignoring theirs. They're avoiding their problems. But there's also, even if that's not you, even if that's not what you identify with, a lot of times people with the fixer mentality are experiencing self-sacrificing behaviors. When I first started the transformational coaching program with my mentor, Jim Fortin, I remember doing one of my first lives, and I was talking about a job that I took. I didn't like, I didn't want, but it fit my family's needs. And I remember saying the words, I'm so willing to self-sacrifice. And it really occurred to me that being a martyr was something that I have as an identity in the back of my mind. What do you get? What is your secondary benefit for being a martyr? What is it doing? What is it creating for you? You might be focused on the cost of it, but you wouldn't be doing it if it didn't have some type of reward because your brain either seeks pleasure or it avoids pain. So you might be focusing on the pain and what it's costing you. But if it was 100% pain 100% of the time, you would not be seeking those type of behaviors out. There is some type of unconscious blind reward you are receiving. And even if your attention is on the cost of it, being a martyr, self-sacrificing, being drained, not having time for self-care, not having time to fill your own bucket, there's still some reward there for you. You can look back at your own life and see the evidence when something is 100% of the time painful, you find a way of changing because that's the way your brain works. When it becomes hard to change that behavior is when you're not aware of the benefits. What is it creating for you? And then sometimes choosing how you want to act next time, sitting with that discomfort, because there's short-term pain and there's long-term pain. And often we're only looking at the short-term pain and we're ignoring the long-term pain. So we might be willing to sacrifice our needs. We might be willing to say yes when we mean no, because at the time that we're saying yes, we're getting that immediate self-gratification of getting recognition, of getting high fives, of getting praised. But our long-term cost is ignored until you're burnt out, you're resentful, you're so depleted. You might be experiencing like depression or other emotions that are more along the lines of chronic. All right. So also there's a cost of boundaries with yourself, boundaries with others. And because you lack those boundaries, you're often the one who's going to attract it again and again and again. Those are those life lessons that you just have to keep learning over and over and over, because you didn't make the change internally to change your external environment. So when I'm talking about not having boundaries and attracting those people, there's going to be moments in your life where you sit and you ask yourself, like, why does everybody always come to me? Why do they expect me to fix this? I'm the one who's always there for them. When I need your help, you're not there for me. Well, you've trained people how to treat you. You've trained people that you're not the person who needs help. You're the person who gives help. So when you ask for help and then you come short-handed, it's because nobody recognizes you. You've been identified as the strong one, as the person who has all their stuff together, as the person who doesn't need help, right? Learning how to balance is going to help you. And that means having boundaries. That means saying no. And that means also asking for help without the expectation of receiving it. That's another episode for another day. We're going to just focus on this hero complex. So let's wrap this up. What can you do differently? We've talked about what hero complex is, what it looks like. We've talked about what rewards are you receiving for it and what is it costing you. So now let's talk about what you can do differently. If you're one of those people that you're like, I identify this, I am tired of experiencing this, I'm tired of being burnt out. I want to have my own self-validation. I want to have my own self-worth. I don't want to keep, training the people around me that I don't trust them to be able to handle it themselves. I don't respect them enough to be able to handle it themselves. Whatever your thoughts may be around this, let's talk about what you can do the next time. Because here's the thing, you need to have your boundaries created in advance and feel good about them and feel strong in them. Otherwise, when you're in the hot seat of it, you're going to be trying to figure it out. You're going to be trying to negotiate with your inner critic at a crucial time. That's not the time that you want to be having that conversation. So you really need to have your boundaries set up in advance. So one thing that you can do is wait for somebody to ask for your help. Don't just immediately jump in and offer. Wait for somebody to ask. As a coach, there are times in my personal relationships that people want me to coach them, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it unless somebody asks. And even when they ask me, I'm still not going to do it because for me, there's a boundary there that if you really want my help, then you would be serious and you would sit down and make an appointment with me and you would create a financial exchange for my time and my effort. But I will still be a friend. I will still listen and I will still validate and I will still offer, like one of the things that we say in transformation in my mentorship is like, I'm willing to pass you the Kleenex, but I'm not going to blow your nose or wipe it. Like I will pass you the Kleenex. I am a caring, compassionate person. So I will listen and I will hear what you have to say, but I'm not going to extend my services. All right. So one, waiting for someone to ask for help. Recognize how often you already assume when someone brings up a problem to you, they haven't asked for your help. They're just venting to you. And you already assume that they're there telling you this story because they expect you to do something about it. Think about that. So one, wait to have someone ask you for help. Two, know your boundaries. All right. I've already kind of mentioned this before. You can't negotiate in the conflict. It's not a fair game then. You need to know who you are and what you want from a peaceful, calm place. We all have situations that pop up where a boundary is not pre-decided and you're in the hot seat of it. That's going to happen, but whenever possible, know what your answers are before somebody asks you for help. Know how you want to handle it the next time if you didn't have time to plan it this time around. Let me give you another, for instance. There is a friend of mine that I consider like family, and they're going through a lot of things right now, financially, emotionally, mentally. And, I offered to help way, way long ago. Okay. Like 5 years ago. I'm like, if you ever need help, I'll help you. Right. This is my old identity. Well, they call in on this help, and they have in the past, but not in a long time because I've had my boundaries. But now, their world is really being stretched, and they're in a place where they are asking anybody and everybody for help. That's where they are. Well, I haven't pre-established my expectations or my boundaries around help. So when they came to me and they asked for help, I was like, sure, I will help you. Let me explain to you what I'm willing to offer you. All right. And so that conversation happened. But then a few days later, they just expected me to help without asking. They didn't ask. They just came to me and they're like, I need you to be here and to do X, Y, and Z. And that immediately created resentment for me because they didn't even ask for my help. And I also had to deal with the fact that I hadn't pre-decided if this ever happened to me, how do I want to handle it? What do I want to do? And it was a struggle for me, honestly, because there was a lot of conflicting values going on for me. All right. So now I know how to handle this the next time it comes up. Sometimes that's the life lesson, and we have to learn through it. First one, wait to ask for help. Second one, know your boundaries. Love yourself enough to stick to those boundaries. Know that you are worth protecting your time and your energy. All right. Know what it's going to cost you. So that's the third thing, is like, consider your intention behind helping somebody. Consider why you're doing it. What's your agenda? What are you getting out of this by helping? What is it costing you? Right. So your third thing is about creating awareness. And if you do decide to help, what is your intention behind helping? Be at peace with yourself. If you're doing it for recognition and you're willing to pay the cost of your time, your energy, your effort, being able to do your own stuff, if that trade is okay for you, then it doesn't matter what I say to you, right? You are at peace with that. And I'm willing to support you. If I was your coach, I'd be willing to support you. You looked at it, you considered it, and I'm always going to support what you want to do when you're intentional about it. Okay. The fourth thing is, look outside of yourself for resources. As the person who likes to jump in and fix things, you're only thinking from your point of view, what you can do, what you can offer. But sometimes when somebody is in the middle of a crisis and they're coming to you for help, they aren't the one who's going to be able to look outside of themselves. They're just reaching for straws, essentially, right? They're at a maximum capacity. And so if somebody comes to you and asks for help, training yourself to be the one to step back and say, does this have to come from me? What about, X, Y, and Z? What about, your coworker? They have some free time. Maybe they're available. Can we talk to them? Let's talk to HR and see if there's a different way of restructuring your work. If this is something personal, let's talk about Uncle Joe. Can Uncle Joe step in and let you borrow his truck instead of me dropping everything? For instance, in my own personal life, my mom is a snowbird, right? And so when she was in her Florida home, the home here where I am at had an issue. I wasn't able to help her. It would have really cost me my time, my energy, and things where I wasn't willing to help. And I was like, okay, can your neighbor help you instead of me? Instead of me driving, 40 minutes out and 40 minutes back and helping you with this house situation, can your neighbor next door? So learning to look outside of yourself. Don't just jump in and say, it's got to be me. I'm the only one that can help you. Look outside of yourself. Who can help you? Think resourcefully. This will help you in the long run. So that was number 4. Number 5 is learning to be uncomfortable. All right. When I was with my kid, instead of jumping in and solving his problem, I handed him the Kleenex. And my version of handing him the Kleenex was, you know what, kid, I love you. This totally sucks that this happened for you. I can relate. Things like this has happened to me in the past. What do you want to do about it? How can I help you? I'm not being the one who's solving. I'm just there to say, I love you. I see you. I recognize your pain. Let me know. And then when they let you know, then you decide whether or not your boundaries, right? That was number 2, your boundaries. Go back to your boundaries and say, does that help? Just because you offered to help does not mean that you are obligated to help them in any way that they ask you. You still have the right to say no. Like, you still have the right to say, okay, well, I hear this is what you need. Like, if you need me to bring soup at 2:00 in the day and I'm working, I am willing to help you. But that soup is either going to have to be dropped off before I come to work or dropped off after work. I'm not, leaving the middle of my workday, right? You have your boundaries. I'm just giving you examples, tons of things to think about. But being comfortable, being uncomfortable, teaching them to be okay with being uncomfortable, teaching them that they don't have to have the answers right now, right here. Clarity will come. And the 6th thing that I'm going to leave you with, and I've already hinted at, is let them guide you. As a helicopter parent, we jump in and we're like, we know what's best for you. I know what's best for you. This is what you need to do. You asked for my help. Well, this is how you're going to get my help, right? Let's separate this from boundaries, okay? Because you can have your boundaries and say, this is what I'm willing to offer you. I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle. Oftentimes, when people help, it's because they want to control how it's being helped. This is different than boundaries. Boundaries is what you're doing for you to protect you, your time, and your energy. What I am saying is, if you're offering to help and you have your boundaries, you can also let go of the need to control the entire situation. It's not really helping somebody to say it has to be done my way if you're going to have my help. You're not teaching them how to fend for themselves. You're not teaching them how to stand up on their own 2 feet. Separate that from boundaries. And I know that's a stretch for some people, but be willing to be the person who's able just to pass the Kleenex and guide them. One of the things I love about life coaches versus going to different types of programs or counseling is life coaches mostly just ask you questions so you can find the answers yourself. This is super beautiful. It's so empowering. One of the things I would ask you on this category of being willing to help without controlling everything that's happening with that help is, can you look at this from, are you creating expansion for them? Are you empowering them? That's true help. One of the spiritual enlightenment philosophies I go by is, do not harm another, right? And harm can be like the harm that I am looking at, the way that I think of my belief system, which you don't have to agree with, but harm can be taking somebody's energy away. So if I come in and I'm saying, I'm going to help you, but it has to be this way, you have to make this choice, you have to follow this rule, then I'm really taking away their authority and their ability to solve and their ability to think for themselves. And I am coming in as a dominant person, dictating what is right and what is wrong. And that takes people's energy away versus coming in and saying, I have help. This is what I'm willing to do. And I'm going to have to be okay with if you don't agree with this. If this isn't what you want to do, I'm going to honor the fact that you have life lessons here and that you still need to grow and experience these things. All right, that's all I really wanted to say about today. I'm going to wrap it up really quick with just the quick 6 things, and then I will see you next week. And I really appreciate you staying till the end. I love you so much. And if possible, it would help me so much if you would take the time to go on to Apple and rate this podcast, honest reviews, although I would absolutely love glowing reviews. I want you to be honest always. All right, so number 1, wait for someone to ask for help. 2, know your boundaries in advance and be willing to stick to it for your own self-care and your love. 3, consider your intentions behind doing something. What are you gaining? What is it costing you? 4, look outside of yourself for help. It doesn't have to come specifically from you. You're still helping by guiding them to other resources. 5, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Be that person that's willing just to sit by their side and notice them and see them. 6, let go of the control around help. All right. Allow that person to figure out as much as possible on their own. And today's episode was over kind of the hero complex, what it's costing you, what you're gaining from it, and what you can do. All right, guys, you matter, and I'll see you next week.